Hello there, this is the Oak Bloke, and this purpose of this video is to talk about Chrysalis. So this is an idea that I've been speaking about for a while. My latest article on my Substack is here. So my Substack being theoakbloke.substack.com. And in this article, the most recent, let's just make it a bit bigger, save my eyes and yours. And in this latest article, I'm talking about the update from 31st of December, so just under 3 months ago. And I've been following this idea. Gosh, I mean, it goes back. I've just been looking through some of my old uh, articles, and I think probably the oldest might be this one here, Crying Out Loud. So let's go down memory lane and see if I can find an old one. In fact, don't cry for me, Argentina. That was back in the World Cup. That does go back a while. So, yeah. So first article was back here at October 23, and it's interesting to kind of go back to these old articles because, you know, like back here, I mean, it was absolutely hated, if I can call it that. That, you know, people were saying, oh, you know, private equity, like stuff like that's in Chrysalis, it's all doomed. You know, it's going to go down 50%, or it's at fair value. And then only 1/3 were actually saying, do you know what? I agree with you, Oak Bloke. There's some value to be had there. And you know, obviously, what a difference 18 months makes. Obviously, we've got a little while to wait for another World Cup, Rugby World Cup, but at least we've seen some. So you could have bought this. I mean, this is a share where it's a massive fall from grace, and then a kind of a recovery story as well. Let me just get the share price up on screen so we can now just sort of spend a moment looking at that as well. So let's pop him by there. So today you can buy this at 95p, and I purpose of this video is sort of to, you know, that none of this is advice, by the way. This is just me talking about my ideas. You know, you make of this what you will. It's you know, you make your own investment decisions. But you can see here, the discounts kind of gone from sub 50%, and this sub 50% here was in fact, if we go back even further, there we go, we can see, you know, that it rose and rose and rose and hit heights of something like £2.70, I think it was. And you know, I must admit, back in the day, I was sort of one of the people going up this hill, and I did sort of get to a point where I thought, you know, there was just other opportunities that looked more interesting for me. So I was I did keep a toehold in Chrysalis. So when it sort of did this, you know, very sharp decline, so from highs of £2.80 to lows of 50p, it kind of reminded me of when I think it was during COVID, when Barclays, you know, was at £2 something and had dropped to 50p, and then I swooped at 50p, and Barclays doubled to a pound, and I thought, thank you very much. Of course, I should have held on to the Barclays shares because they're now worth something approaching £3, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, £3. There we go, £2.97. So yeah, sold too early, but I did double my money and said thank you very much, Barclays. But you know, it was all priced to. In fact, was it COVID or was it 2009? It might have been 2009. I'm thinking of. In fact, let's just go back a gear if it will let us, and let's have a look. Oh no, yeah, it must have been 2009 I'm thinking of, because it didn't drop to, or maybe it did drop to 50p back here at its lows, but you can see it sort of, if it did, then it very rapidly flew back up again. Anyway, that's not here to talk about Barclays. So this is at a massive discount, as you can see here. You know, even though let's say over 3 years it's gone from lows of 50p to nearly doubling, you know, this is kind of where my Barclays thought process comes in. Like, oh, I've doubled my money. Should I up and sell, or should I, is there more to come? And I suppose this video is, I think there's more to come. So a couple of reasons for that. A couple of reasons for that. Let's, and even back here, I mean, back here, so let's go back down memory lane. So back here, Starling was worth 140 million today. Let's go to the latest one. Starling is worth double. Okay, so Starling has doubled since 31/12/24, going back to, well, this article was October 23, so this would have been perhaps the June 23 valuation. So that's doubled. That's doubled in 18 months. Just to give you an idea of how successful Starling has been in terms of its NAV, and we'll spend a bit of time on Starling in a minute. Brandtech, I think it's, we won't go through all of these, but Klarna we can see was at 57 million. Klarna today is 143. So again, some real, but to be fair, this had fallen a great long way, that they'd written this down a great long way. And there's also, not all of these are successes, like this one, for example, 188, and today it's 65. So there has been some failures as well as several successes. And also we'll see some that don't feature in here, or at least this one here, GraphCore 1 million. This is a deferred payment, but essentially GraphCore's been sold. It's been sold to ARM Holdings. So ARM Holdings is owned by SoftBank. And if you want to know more about SoftBank, you could go and read my article on Bugfud, which is, I think, this one here. I don't want to go too much off topic, but SoftBank is a really interesting share. So the fact that they've got GraphCore is incredibly positive. That guy there is the CEO. Anyway, that's another video for another article for another time, but certainly worth a read. And the other holdings that they have are great as well. Back to this. So so we can see Starling's done phenomenally well. Klarna's done phenomenally well, and then there's others that are kind of not as dramatic, but Feature Space has been offloaded at a big profit. Graphical's been offloaded at a loss, but there was a lot of people, and I remember having some debates with people in the chatosphere say, people saying, oh, GraphCore's written off, it's worth nothing. I was like, well, hang on, it's got 1,100 patents. It gave NVIDIA a run for its money in data center GPUs. I mean, the GraphCore call them IPUs, intelligent processing units. Because at the end of the day, NVIDIA uses graphical processing units for data centers. So that's not what GPUs were designed for. GPUs were designed for graphics, for running memory intensive graphics programs like CAD and things like that need high performance for graphics, and also for gaming. PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 need intense, for smooth graphics and smooth animation. So that's but GraphCore is one of those that could have been, should have been, perhaps will be under SoftBank. SoftBank are deep pockets. The guy's a smart guy. Anyway, those are some disposals, and there's been a few others as well. That Wise, TransferWise, you may know of. Again, that's there's a small legacy holding here, and that's done incredibly well as well. Anyway, let's look at Klarna. So Klarna has announced it's going to IPO in April. Okay, so that's this article here. We don't yet know the exact number, but it looks like it might be 15 billion. So the IPO 15 billion, and that will put so essentially I say in this article, let me just pop him at the end, because then I won't get lost in all of these different articles. Put him over there. So yeah, in this I talk about how and these were the sort of numbers that now there's new numbers I'm going to show you in a moment that are associated with the IPO, that of course they're presenting the growth and the continued success. So this was back at this article is February, or no, so it's actually March. So it's actually only 8 days ago that I recorded this, and this was the numbers, the latest available numbers as at 8 days ago. So this just kind of gives you a flavour that even since, and those numbers, to be fair, are probably as at 31st of December, something like that. But we can see on the investor relations page, we've gone from obviously it's not a vast jump, but we've got sort of gone from 85 to 93 million customers, merchants 600,000, and now at 675. So they've increased their merchants by 12%. 25 countries is now 26, and the GMV 105 billion. I don't think the GMV is in there, but from memory, I think it was sub 100 billion. So again, the gross merchandise volume. So that's essentially the amount of sales that's running through the Klarna system. Is and obviously they're taking a percentage cut, so they're not saying their revenue is $105 billion, just to be clear. They're saying they're trading or they're processing 105 billion worth of stuff for their merchants, of payments, and then obviously they're taking a cut of that 105. Okay. In fact, in this article here, this is the last accounts, and these are all in Swedish krona. So the rough numbers was that you can see here that income's increasing, and it was very interesting that whilst you'd sort of think, oh yes, they take a little commission on every payment and that's their business model. Well, no, actually no. A lot of what they're doing is, you can see it here, that there's that they're essentially doing loans to consumers, but the model is that the retailer pays for the cost of the loan, but also that they're kind of, the loans are not long term. That essentially Klarna will say, like, buy the I don't know, the mug. Let's say it's a mug. Buy the mug today, and then you can pay £1 today and £1 in 2 weeks and another £1 in another 2 weeks. So these are sort of, like a 1 month or 6 weeks loan. They're not long-term loans. So essentially that means that they can recycle the same money about 9 times a year over there. So actually, if you do the maths, it's a 40-day loan, not a 6-week loan. Well, yeah, I suppose 6 weeks is 42 days, but they're sort of recycling things about 9 times a year. And it's interesting because they're making a 1.5% net transaction margin, and that's so essentially the $100 loan lent at a 1.5% margin with and of that margin you're making a 30% profit margin. So that's the amount of revenue, that's the amount of profit on the revenue, and that's how many times you're doing it. That essentially that they're sort of generating $4 out of every 100. Okay, so that's not amazing numbers, but that's just one part of their revenue streams. They're also involved in advertising. They're also involved in just essentially sort of providing services and then charging for those services. And we can see this here, where what we can see is the revenue growing, and that's partly down to more merchants, but it's also this what they call the compounding merchant cohorts that as merchants use Klarna, they kind of use it more. That the actual um, retention rate of this is well above 100%. It's essentially that there's growth from existing merchants within the platform, but some really high profile deals as well. I mean, the likes of Expedia, Uber, and I think in the later article, in this one, we sort of then see further names being added. So we can see Stripe, Zalando, eBay, WooCommerce, Apple iPay, Nexi. I mean, some of these I've never heard of Nexi, but essentially partnerships that are building on prior partnerships. So it's kind of very much an ecosystem, and when you kind of play around with it, as I have, I mean, you can't. Well, at least my opinion was I can't. Excuse me. Just have a quick lubricate the tonsils. Can't help but feel very impressed by the technology, and I mean, I think that sums it up very nicely. 4.9 out of 5. Like, nobody dislikes using Klarna, essentially. Well, there's always one, isn't there? But one in 100 dislike it. So, but also that it's interesting because it's financial services, but it's not. It's retail, but it's not. It's lending, but it's not. It's advertising, but it's not. It's kind of this very ubiquitous shopping experience that kind of wraps up all kinds of elements within it, but is very compelling. Because of I don't need the money today, but I need the money in the next, I need to have the money available in the next 40 days. So it kind of tides you over to payday, I suppose, for a lot of people. And this sort of how it works just kind of gives you get the Klarna app, and then the interesting thing is that because it's all in one place, that you could just Klarna it rather than, so it almost becomes kind of like an Amazon shopping experience, that you just go to one place, and then if you want to buy a mug, or you want to buy some shoes, or you want to buy whatever, you just use and then because you're getting the interest-free credit each time, and you're sort of able to say, like, oh, here's all the money that I'm going to need to pay out at payday to pay off my Klarna. And of course, if they don't, they get interest charges and late payment charges. So that's another revenue stream. And the actual default rate is very reasonably low as well, or at least historically has been. So yeah, so I mean, I really like Klarna, and in some ways, when they float it, in some ways, it would be nice if that 143 didn't just come back as cash. And by the way, that is the valuation based upon a float at 16.6. So if it is 15 billion, as that article says, then obviously it's not 143. There's 10% loss, or 10% lower than that. So that would sort of bring it to 130 million. But I mean, I wouldn't be too disappointed with that, because that 130 million is well, as you saw in that earlier article, 130 million is well over double of what it was carrying, back 18 months ago. So um, this this number, I suspect, is kind of based upon the conversations they've had with Klarna, that they were kind of floated at that price. But we'll see. I mean, does the FT know better than Chrysalis? I'd suspect that probably Chrysalis have a better insight. But ultimately, will it be successful at 16.6, or will it have to go to 15? Who knows? But we'll see that very soon in April. Um, and yeah, as I say, the longer term picture, I mean, you could imagine over, well, you can see here, the 24% growth, and targeting continued growth into the future. You know that you could imagine that Klarna is one of those shares that will do, in my opinion, that could do well, and that has a long runway ahead of it. So, as I say, if some of it gets liquidated into cash and some of it doesn't, I wouldn't be overly disappointed. So that's one of the holdings. And as I say, I mean, you're buying this at about 50% off, because 95p and the NAV is £1.56, and the NAV is pretty solid. So, and we can see this as well here, where we see period by period. So what I did was I basically sort of just mapped out the four quarterly valuations of each of the shares. So we can see this is the WeFox reduction that I spoke of. We'll talk about that in a minute. The Starling increase, the Brandtech increase, Smart Pension, not a vast increase, but there is one. By the way, the dark blue is how much they bought it for in the first place. So WeFox, for example, they've thrown just over 100 million into it. So it's at this 0.6x means basically that's the 40% reduction. Okay, whereas here 2.4x, they invested 130, let's say 120, and it's grown to 2.4 times to 270. Okay, so that's what these X is. So anything above a 1x means they've made a profit. Anything below a 1x means since they put the money in, it's actually reduced, not increased. And the ones that were disposed of, I've obviously just marked as sold, because and that one was below 1x, that one was above 1x, just sort of. And then these ones are well, we can see an increase in fourth quarter for Infosum. Secret Escapes obviously is not done well, which is disappointing, because obviously the overall market is positive, and we can also see the increase of gross cash, and some of that is offset with debt that they took out a facility. So what they wanted to do was to start the buybacks, and the money coming from coming from Feature Space was due to come in, was guaranteed essentially. So the debt was kind of offsetting against the cash that was due to come in, which we can see arrived here in the fourth quarter. So buybacks are happening. Buybacks are happening pretty fast and furious, actually. One of the things, so yeah, there we go. That's the one from yesterday. So they bought back, nearly £250,000 worth of shares. Okay, so that's 1.2 million a week, over 5 days. So 1.2 million a week is over, let's say, a 50 week year. That's 60 million shares that are being bought back, and the number of shares in issue is about 500 million. I think I cover it actually further down here, where the buybacks. Here we go. So yeah, the I sort of say here, if they carry on buying back, of course the discount's growing greater. That when you strip out the cash, that the discount's not 40%, it's more like 50%. But that's a phenomenal number, that they've actually bought back 10% of their shares since they started the buyback program. So that will have increased the NAV by certainly by a couple of pence, even just so far. This was in another article, or a reference to another article, where I'd sort of just done a comparison across lots of different or venture capital investment trusts. So Chrysalis is one of those. That's the one I've sort of marked in silver, and we can see here, 40% discount. It's come off a 57% discount. It's up 41% from its 12-month low, and if you go further back, it's up nearly 100%. So it's closed its discount by a bit. Its NAV is £1.57. So in a way, there's others like IP Group, EMV, that Tech Capital, that are at even larger discounts. So for me, picking this one was just based around its potential that, Klarna is imminent. And of course, since I wrote this article 8 days ago, it's now been confirmed. In fact, it was pretty much the day after the article that they announced the IPO. So when I said it was imminent, I wasn't kidding. And you can see this here, that if you actually sort of take the last valuation point, so this was based upon the share price being, I think it was 92.1p. Um, and obviously that spread, is slightly lower. Oh, sorry, no, it's higher. So it's, these numbers are obviously a little bit out of date. So that 42 would probably move more like about 40 now. But yeah, based upon sort of post period, that sort of got me to 43%. So that's down to the fact that I think it was like TransferWise is listed, so obviously the share price of that's gone up, and this discount figure, estimated NAV, so it's gone up by 14 million. Trying to think what else that would be. That 14 million would have been based upon that. If we go in, no, I haven't noted it anywhere, but there was some reason for that, and yeah, and interesting as well, actually, that even WeFox, where obviously it's dropped and it's at 0.6 times, that there'd been an upwards valuation of WeFox, and also some news according to Sky News. So this article here, that there's a new funding round being discussed. So Searchlight Capital, which is a private equity house, are potentially going to refinance WeFox's debt and do an equity raise, and that would involve Chrysalis potentially. Obviously, we don't know that for sure. So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom, and certainly the re-rating upwards is good to see. So um, let's move back, because the one that I've not discussed, because obviously Klarna is exciting, and it's potentially worth upwards of 140, 130, 140, something like that. But I mean, obviously we need to talk about this one, and potentially, these as well. I mean, there's some other. Certainly, it's not all about Klarna. Starling needs to appear. Probably, if I say this article, just move him up to the more interesting world with Starling in it. So I wrote this back in June. So this is based upon the last annual report from Starling Bank. So I think that takes us straight into the annual report 2024. So third year of profitable growth. The growth had revenue growth one and a half times. 4.2 million bank account holders, but they've also got a software business. So this is the interesting thing, that you've got. This is a Romanian bank owned by, I'd like to say maybe the Bank of Romania is the ultimate parent. So this is a kind of challenger bank in Romania, and then this one's an Australian bank, and again it's owned by a larger parent, and it's a startup challenger bank. But both of these are essentially using Starling's technology. So as you can see there, one in Australia, one in. But you can see that Starling themselves are. I mean, this number particularly. Growing their ROTE, or return on tangible equity. Now, I don't watch CNBC now. Actually, I watch Bloomberg. I've defected, but I used to watch CNBC all the time. And Steve, I'm trying to remember his surname, but the morning presenter chap, he's a clever guy, and he would talk about banking results, and would always focus in on ROTE. So this is a little lesson that I learned from him, that return on tangible equity is the ratio to really focus on. And if we went and looked at Barclays, I think Barclays ROTE is somewhere like 14%, and all of the big four banks, they've got sort of a return on tangible equity of somewhere between 10% and maybe 15%, something like that. Santander the same. So 31.5 is really good, really good. And the cost of servicing each customer, and I think I talk about it in this article, if I'm not mistaken, that one of the real sort of strengths of Starling is the fact that its cost per customer is £40 to service a customer account is £40 per customer per year, whereas its competitors is more like 250. And of course, quite a bit of that difference is going to be that Starling doesn't have branches and the others do. And the cost of running branches is pretty horrific. And I talk about the ROTE here as well, of course, but the other bit to this is, well, what about that software business? Like, what's the value of that? And that they're not standing still either. So the app itself, the software platform itself, is evolving further as well. And this reference here was basically a value-based investment trust that buys up distressed businesses and sort of buys them to turn them or to see them turn around. So these are very keen on that's just sort of a bit of fun on my part, but referring to them as cousin Avi. But anyway, yeah. These two customers are at the cusp of going live, if not live. So obviously we're going to at some point see, Challenger Bank doing very well in Romania, Challenger Bank doing very well in Australia. If they can replicate that same ROTE of 31.5% or something approaching it, then obviously that's a very potentially positive reason for more banks to buy the engine software from Starling, and therefore but also that potentially, I mean, that could be an IPO in itself, let alone an IPO of Starling, that you could actually do two IPOs, split the business into two, float them both, and the valuation would, I suspect, be much higher than just 270 million. Okay, so that's Starling as well, and there's more in this article. I think I talk about the just the very high reviews that it gets. So as sort of a retail bank, so business to consumer, it's second highest. So first highest is Tide, which is owned or one of the holdings of Augmentum Fintech. So if in case you're wondering, and I think number 3 is Zopa, which is also an Augmentum Fintech holding. So we could talk about that on another video. But again, they're miles ahead of the competition in terms of customer service and customer experience. So this service quality ratio of 78 and 83%, this is the business to business part, very strong. Its growth rate 15%. I mean, it's not stellar. There are faster growing banks like Monzo, but 15% isn't shabby, and obviously transactions rising isn't shabby. So we can see there that again, lot of active accounts. So not just people that have opened an account, they're using it. That's perhaps another metric. And these metrics I thought were very interesting as well. So again, part of the very high ROTE, the cost of £40 per customer is the non-staff unit running costs have halved over the last few years. So really interesting. So lots of automation, And because they've built the software from the ground up and they're using it themselves, I mean, they themselves are a great advertisement for the success of their software. I really like that idea of a successful, um, software customer is also the supplier of that software. Uh, of course, it does mean that probably the UK banks see Starling as a competitor and not as a supplier. So it's a little bit like Pinewood. If you know the story of that, that was one of my Oak Bloke 2024 ideas, where when I'm trying to think who it was, when the car is a car retailer and the name escapes me, but they got bought out by Lithia in the US. Um, and as part of it, that basically they hived off the software business, and since then the software business has sold into I think it might be Pendragon. It was Pendragon that became Pinewood, or at least Pinewood was the software part. So the Pendragon business, the car business, went off to Lithia. um, Pendragon got renamed to Pinewood, and Pinewood is now the software part of that what was Pendragon. But since then, Pinewood has actually sold into Pendragon's competitors, because now Pendragon's competitors don't see it as a buying from the competition; they're buying from a supplier. So it's worked, and the same would work, I think, for Starling as well in due course. Okay, well, look, that kind of almost brings me to, and this was the sort of setup of the banking software. That, as you can see, it's like drag and drop, and what you want to see on your dashboard, and so some really interesting uh, capabilities that you can kind of just configure your banking system through some nice friendly interfaces. Um, I suppose I did a read across here of Monzo, because I had at the time the Monzo accounts as well, and that Starling, um, in terms of how they compared. So 1.76 valuation versus, I think it was a 4.1 valuation. So when we looked at when we looked at those, I mean, it was interesting because the Financial Times in this article here talked about a 10 billion valuation to Starling. They don't say how, but they say it's worth 10 billion. Um, that yeah. So when you compare, so Starling earned 190 profit before tax versus Monzo with 15 million profit before tax, so earned 20 times more profit than Monzo. Um, when this one's worth 4.1 billion and this one's 20 times more. I'm not saying that Starling's worth 82 billion. That would be a bit silly of me. But certainly the 1.2 billion at Chrysalis own. Now that number will have changed. Um, so 11.76. In fact, if we do a bit of mathematics, we can pretty quickly get to the um, get to the answer to this. So if we let's just go quickly back to here. So 278.9. Okay, so let's just do a reset. 278.9 divided by 11 point. So that valuation is based upon Starling now being worth 2.37 billion pounds. Okay, so 2.37 billion pounds is double this 1.2 billion. So when I was sort of saying 1.2 billion looks very low, but the subsequent updates mean that it's been revalued at 1.76. So it's now being revalued at 2.37. But we're only really saying, compared to this 4.1 billion, it's still undervalued versus Monzo. Now you might say, well, no, hang on a minute, Monzo is growing faster. it's got higher levels of deposits, and there were metrics that you could say, well, Monzo is the stronger, but Monzo has no banking software business. Um, and Monzo, I mean, yes, it's growing faster, but was far less profitable. So you can argue it both ways, but certainly that's an interesting read across. And I suppose if you took other valuations, I think when I compared it to something like Lloyd's, for example, with a 42 billion valuation, um, that in comparison to profitability, I mean, let's just quickly. So this is yeah. So this is sort of these are earning 6p on a 70p share. So that's what, an 8% profit rate. Um, Whereas obviously that is a PB, sorry, 301 million. So 301 million PBT. I mean, let's drop that to 225. Okay, on that valuation, 225. I mean, we're talking of what, a PE of less than 11, maybe. Um, so 225, 10 and a half price earnings of 10 and a half times. So, and obviously, if the profits have grown in the next accounts for Starling, which I suspect they might, whereas I think if you took, I don't know if this will give us, yeah. So, whereas here, I mean, obviously, net income 4 billion, 5 billion, 3 billion, 5 billion, 1 billion. I mean, okay, this was down to COVID, but I mean, we're not seeing like vast growth of any description at Lloyd's compared to, yeah, 190 growing to 301. That's, the not only is the growth not there at Lloyd's, that's worth 42 billion. Okay, um, that yeah, I think when you sort of say, well, something that costs you 42 billion and that can make you, let's say, 4 billion. It's about, well, actually they're about the same ratio, but Lloyd's doesn't have a software business. Lloyd's doesn't have growth. So I suppose, but equally, Lloyd's does pay a dividend, so it's not entirely a fair comparison. And obviously, Starling is far more of a challenger and a startup than Lloyd's, which obviously has enormous brand equity and longevity and lots of millions of customers and so on. But certainly when you look at the return on tangible equity from Starling, that you could see Starling overtaking Lloyd's, as in ratio wise. So therefore the sort of roughly similar valuation of a PE of about 10 times. In fact, this should tell us, yeah, PE of 11.36. Yeah, you're certainly, you, you could sort of imagine, because the earnings growing at Starling, that PE will drop below a comparative PE of 11. So PE of 10.5 at Starling makes it cheaper than Lloyd's, with no growth. That has no growth, or at least has very low levels of growth. But of course, its shares have grown. So yeah, you would have bought them at half the price of what they are today. Okay, look, so just to sort of summarize then, the opportunity of Chrysalis. um, I mean, we could talk about these other companies a little bit. In fact, let's just quickly do so. I mean, Smart Pension is um, very much sort of a growth business, where they are providing a pension service for the UK, growing number of people. There's a recurring revenue. They basically charge a couple of quid um, per person per month. So it's a growing profitable business. The brand tech is this is an AI-driven marketing um, campaign building business. So they're very much around marketing, a series of marketing businesses. In fact, I do talk about them a little bit in this article. So if we just, marketing technology group that helps brands do their marketing better, faster, cheaper. This case study was where they said, like, let's create a toothpaste advert or toothpaste marketing campaign in 6 minutes, or maybe 59 minutes. I thought it was six, but it says 59 there. But gives you an idea of what they're doing. So this pencil was one of their acquisitions, and they were very excited about it. Generated 2.35 million ads for 5,000 brands and 2.65 billion in media spend since 2018. So, some impressive numbers there. And this kind of speaks to that a little bit. And then so that's the brand tech business. Secret Escapes, you may know of. Secret Escapes is the holiday company. So you can Secret Escapes. You can go and sort of search for these lovely holidays, best price guarantee, last minute luxury deals. I kind of cookies everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, you just sort of you can sort of see them there. Things in Portugal, 38% off, and magical Zurich, and so it's all kind of high end, lovely places. So yeah, it'd be nice to see this do well. But yeah, that hasn't been one of the success stories, unfortunately. But there's still time. And Deep Instinct is a cybersecurity play. Infosum is what is Infosum? Good question. I don't remember myself. It's sorry, yeah, it's come back to me. So essentially, Infosum, again, very interesting. With with GDPR, I'm sure most companies are breaking GDPR constantly. And how? Because essentially they're sharing people's data with third parties when they shouldn't be. Now, obviously, at the moment, there's not vast numbers of prosecutions, and it's difficult to prove, and da 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 da. But what InfoSum does is it just makes you completely GDPR compliant because you don't actually share any data. It's essentially the data becomes anonymized, and the data can be shared between different parties without sharing the data. And the reason that it's not shared, the non-movement of data, is basically they create these secure environments or bunkers. And the data, the raw data, stays under the owner's control. So what they do is they kind of create little. It's almost like an anonymization of data, where they'll create references to the data without actually transferring the data itself. So you have these private set intersections, a cryptographic technique where it will compare data, identify overlapping customers without identifying individual records. So clever stuff, and you can see lots and lots of commercial use for it. I guess it depends upon the strictness by which people and businesses follow privacy rules and privacy in GDPR. So I think there's probably a little bit of stuff going on that perhaps shouldn't. So this could be something that would be massive if GDPR is interpreted quite strictly, and if we saw some prosecutions of businesses that are um, slightly breaking the rules over use of marketing data. I think that would drive business InfoSum's way. So anyway, you can imagine lots of corporates using it, and it being a bit of a no-brainer because of the risk of compromising data or loss of data, and that instead you're securing your data, you're not sharing it, but you're collaborating with other parties and partners over things like data cleansing and so on. And this whole issue of data and data management's only getting bigger. It's a phenomenally expensive thing to clean data. So if you can provide mechanisms that better automate it, then so much the better. So anyway, that pretty much completes, and I don't think we've missed anyone. Apologies if I have. I think that covers all of, yes, it does. It covers all of these holdings. As I say, some of these are, and sorted. I'm not going to talk about because, as you can see there, it's pretty much dead. So that one are all sort of essentially debtors rather than actual holdings. Wise is a listed holding, but again, has been largely exited. So, but that in itself is quite an interesting holding. But the real value, as you can see here, is Starlin and Klarna, and then to some extent these 5 or 6 here are then, and actually the final thing to say is that the next thing that will be very interesting to see is what, if any, holdings Chrysalis buy into, because I think this gross cash 140 million, I mean, yes, they'll carry on doing buybacks, but I think they'll get to a point where they'll say, well, hang on a minute, we want to revitalize our pipeline of opportunities, because these are starting to mature to a point where you could see Starlin, certainly see Starlin exit, and as I say, potentially 2 IPOs. Klarna is IPOing. Smart Pension, I don't think is that far away from an IPO. Brandtech isn't. I think WeFox could surprise us all and actually do quite well. I know I've said that in the past and it hadn't done so well, but I could see there being something of a turnaround story to come with that. InfoSum, I could see that IPOing or just getting bought out, that it becomes part of a marketing services or some sort of software service. So either route. Deep Instinct, again, I could see that getting picked up by a large cybersecurity outfit. I think there's so much duplication out there in cybersecurity that we'll see some consolidation in that sector. So that could get bought out at some point. Secret Escapes, again, that I've got a little bit of a soft spot for having been on a secret escape, and it was lovely. Certainly can recommend it to any readers. I certainly had a lovely holiday, but yeah, it is higher end. It is. It's you're not gonna have that grotesque. Yeah, I won't say who, but the adverts are classy and the service is good. I'd say the prices were fine. It possibly wasn't. I think that the you get a vast amount of discount. You perhaps don't. I mean, it's not about the discount. It's about having a really nice holiday. If you want to sort of splash out for something special, then I would certainly use that and not one of the more uh, lower lower level cheaper options that cannot be as good. I'm trying to be polite. um, and yeah, so and obviously feature space wise, GraphCore, Sorted are all sort of on their way out or gone. So those yeah, so potentially you could sort of see the whole lot IPOing at some stage in the not too distant future, and probably Secret Escapes and WeFox are probably the least or the most far away from that, but the rest of them are not. So I think to see new blood and see what that new blood will be very, very interesting. But yeah, I really like it, and at 95p, I think it's a good price. But look, that's just my opinion. As I say, this video is not advice; it's just me talking about my perspective on it, and you can see I've written quite a number of articles over the years. So this one was Don't Cry Because It's Over. This one was Cry Out for Clarity. So I do cover the Chrysalis crying out loud. Bless him. uh, and so I do cover this uh, uh, fairly regularly on the basis that there's new news to be talking about, and I'll probably cover it once the IPO's been the details are firmed up. So watch out for that, and maybe you'll say cripes too. Okay, that's it from the Oak Bloke. Thank you very much, and do if you want to like the video, subscribe. I'd be very happy for you to do that. To give me a thumbs up. In my description, there's also Emmaus that I know many of you have contributed to, and that's what keeps these videos going and the Substack articles going. So please, if you haven't, please do contribute to that. I'd really appreciate it. There are several thousand getting on for 3,000 people watching these videos and reading my articles. So 100 of you have, and 2,000 and something of you haven't. So you know who you are, and please help. I mean, it's. I had an email from them today, actually, from Emmaus, saying that there are a record number of homeless on the streets, which obviously is a tragedy, um, but actually, the real hidden tragedy is the number of people that are sofa surfing. And I have sofa surfed once upon a time, not for very long. It was like a few days, and it was largely because I just kind of, a friend said, "Oh, just come and stay, and like, you can have the settee." So I wasn't in any great peril or kind of difficulty. It was sort of, but having done it for a few days. Kind of living out of a suitcase in the corner of the room, pack away your suitcase each morning. It's not a great existence. So, I do feel for people that are in that situation, and what Emmaus do is basically say, like, if you need a roof over your head, then fair enough, but in return you've got to work in, they have different shops and different businesses dotted throughout the country. So this is their website, and they've got sort of different social enterprises, essentially. And so part of staying in an Emmaus property, a house, is that you work and give back. So it's not just a handout; it's a hand up for people. And also what they do is uh, they support people in terms of I think that it comes under this bit here with development opportunities, that they'll help them do some training or help them pass their driving test. So help them get themselves back on their feet. So for example here, they completed. I mean, obviously those numbers are quite old, but completed 1,850 training courses. So it's nice to give something back. If you have profited from making your own investment decisions and bought something like Chrysalis and doubled your money, then it would be nice for you to kind of recognize that by giving something to Emmaus. So I would encourage you to be one of the join the 102 that have. Just quickly as well, if you want to give, then this is my Substack. It's here. It's really easy. Help Emmaus. Can't be easier. Just click Help Emmaus. That takes you to the fundraising page. You can see there I've got, even look at that. Even just a day ago, somebody's donated. So thank you to all of these readers that have supported it. You can see here there's 108 that have, and 2,000 and something that haven't. So please be one of the supporters. Thank you very much, and appreciate you watching my videos. More to come from the Oak Bloke soon. Cheerio for now. Cheerio.